Welcome to My Tiny Tarot Practice, a podcast exploring the archetypes of the tarot through tiny, tender, heartfelt episodes. I'm your host, Amelia Fruby, and this podcast started as a project to help me study the tarot. And from 2022 to 2024, I slowly created 5-minute episodes for every single card in the major and minor arcana. I loved working on this project, and when I completed it, I made a zine of my interpretations of the cards, which you can purchase on a sliding scale at the link in the show notes. It's the perfect companion to listening to the show because it includes revised written versions of my interpretation of each card, as well as an accompanying image from the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. So you can really take these interpretations anywhere and use them as you pull cards from your deck. So that zine, again, is linked in the show notes. If you cannot afford the sliding scale, you can reach out to me there and I will send you a complimentary copy. I never want to gatekeep access to tarot or its meanings. And to continue that effort, today I am resharing an episode from one of my other podcasts that is incredibly relevant to this show. So in addition to My Tiny Tarot Practice, I host a podcast called Pleasure Reading, where I share curated reading lists and conversations with some of my bookish friends. And earlier this spring, I made an episode on the 4 books that I recommend for tarot beginners, tarot lovers, and tarot pros. Basically, if someone's asking me about what book they should read to explore the tarot, I'm going to recommend one of these books, whether you have never picked up a deck before or you've been reading professionally for decades. These are my favorite books, and I'm so excited to recommend them to you. So this was published on Pleasure Reading Podcast a few weeks, maybe months ago, and now I'm bringing that audio here to you, beautiful My Tiny Tarot Practice listeners, in case you need a little inspiration for your summer reading. Speaking of summer, happy summer solstice to my friends in the Northern Hemisphere. Thank you so much for tuning in to My Tiny Tarot Practice. Now, please enjoy this episode of Pleasure Reading Podcast, where I will share the 4 books I recommend for tarot beginners, tarot lovers, and tarot pros. The first book on my list is such a foundational text in tarot that I almost consider it the textbook of the space, although it is, of course, a beautifully written, thoughtful, reflective textbook, not a boring, dry textbook. But that is 78 Degrees of Wisdom, A Tarot Journey to Self-Awareness by Rachel Pollack. Rachel Pollack is a renowned tarot scholar, and in this book, she writes about all of the cards, not only through individual interpretations, but as a journey through 3 lines of the major arcana. And she draws so many connections between cards that in reading this, I really felt like I got to know each individual card and the tarot as a whole. When she divides the major arcana into 3 lines, they're meant to represent consciousness or the outer concerns of life, subconsciousness or the search inward to figure out who we are, and superconsciousness or the development of our spiritual awareness and what is greater than or beyond us. I often think of those as well as the journeys of dependence, where we have to rely on society, independence, where we come into our own and separate ourselves from, our parents often in our developmental journey or the world at large. And then interdependence, where we realize that we are all connected to each other. And learning to think of the tarot that way really helped me understand the archetypes in these cards and interpret the relationship between myself and the world in different ways. My copy of 78 Degrees of Wisdom is so marked up. Everything is underlined. I went through this book in depth when I was making my tiny tarot practice, and it still greatly informs my interpretations of the cards. If you really want to take on a study of the tarot, I highly, highly recommend 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. The second book on my list is brand new, like just came out brand new, but the person who wrote it has informed my understanding of the tarot for years. So tarot reader and teacher Lindsay Mack just released what I believe is her first tarot book after decades of teaching tarot classes, and it's called Tarot for the Wild Soul, a trauma-informed approach for growth, healing, and grounding in the present moment. This book is beautiful. If you are just starting out with tarot, I think that Lindsay's approach is so wonderful. I mean, it's great for beginners and pros, but for me, when I was trying to learn the cards, her podcast episodes really gave me a way in, even when I still felt a little unsure or skeptical or like, is tarot really for me? Is this really real? I so appreciated her approach to soul tarot and the way that it is simple, practical, and revolutionary. So Lindsay insists that tarot is not a tool for future telling, but it's a tool for the present moment and a tool that helps us find our way back to ourselves in the midst of any emotion. So I really find Lindsay's approach so supportive when I have big feelings coming up, when I'm really unsure what to do, and I want to turn to the cards for support without just bypassing or outsourcing my inner knowing. I am obsessed with Tarot for the Wild Soul, and I really, really want you to get a copy. There is also a tarot deck that goes along with the book. It's called Soul Tarot, a deck and guidebook for healing and discovery. And I highly, highly encourage you to pick both of these up. They are linked in the show notes. I hope you'll get your own copies. And if you want to hear more from Lindsay, she's going to be on one of my other podcasts, Off the Grid, very soon, or maybe she's just been on it. As I'm recording this, we have our conversation scheduled, but it hasn't been recorded, edited, or published yet. So I will link in the show notes our conversation on Off the Grid, Leaving Social Media podcast whenever it goes live. And I'll probably share it on the My Tiny Tarot feed as well. So if you're just interested in tarot, make sure you subscribe to My Tiny Tarot practice so you can hear me in conversation with Lindsay there. And between now and then, order her book, Tarot for the Wild Soul. The next book on my list is Tarot for the Hard Work by Maria Minnis. This book is so important because, as the subtitle says, it offers an archetypal journey to confront racism and inspire collective healing. As tarot has moved into sort of 21st century influencer practices in the US, Maria Minnis rightfully points out that the practice has inherited a lot of white supremacy characteristics and values. But I love how in this book, she regrounds tarot in anti-racist practice. And she charts a course that is a hero's journey of unlearning white supremacy culture. This book is really focused on the major arcana, not the minors, but it includes multiple perspectives of each major card and how it shows up in internalized and societal racism, as well as the shadows of each card and activities, reflection prompts, and inspirational affirmations that card provides to dismantle internalized racism, interpersonal racism, and racism in communities. I cannot recommend this book enough. Maria is amazing. I've been able to go to a few workshops with her, and her approach to the tarot is just so grounded in embodiment, in liberatory practice, and in anti-racism. So if you want to deepen your understanding of the tarot, if you're frustrated with how white the space can be, or if you are a white person yourself and want to use the tarot to reshape your ethics, values, and politics, I highly, highly recommend Tarot for the Hard Work by Maria Minnis. The fourth book on my list is Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr. Jessica Dorr is a licensed social worker, in addition to being a tarot reader, writer, and teacher. And this book really weaves together her study of psychology and behavioral science with her mystical practice of tarot. I really appreciated the sort of what felt like a depth psychology approach to the tarot archetypes and thinking about these cards with different therapeutic practices. So Jessica Dore weaves in psychology discourse, what felt to me like CBT or DBT practices, which is cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectic behavioral therapy. Like all of that comes through in this book. And so Tarot for Change is the book I recommend to people who are more interested in perhaps the self-exploration side of tarot than the spiritual side of tarot. Of course, I think of tarot as a spiritual, mystical, magical practice, but I don't think you have to, for instance, believe in God or not believe in God to use and appreciate tarot cards. And I think that Jessica Dore's approach is really great if you want to use the cards for personal development, if you're really interested in personal growth, and you want a little more of the psychological perspective on that than perhaps the mystical perspective on that. I actually think all of the books that I've mentioned here do a great job of weaving together the personal, the political, the spiritual, the psychological. It's all in all of them, but because Tarot for Change is written by a licensed social worker, I think it comes through the most there. So that is my fourth recommendation, Tarot for Change by Jessica Dore. And then as I wrap up this episode, I have one bonus recommendation for you. Now, this is maybe not a book for tarot beginners as much as a book for tarot lovers, but it is the book I recommend if you just want a beautiful, beautiful visual journey through the cards. And that is Tarot from the Library of Esoterica by Taschen. This is a tome, it is a 500-page hardcover coffee table type of book that includes images of every single card in the tarot from a variety of decks. So this is a very visual approach to the tarot, and they do have qualities, symbols, and brief interpretations for each card, but I use this book when I want to steep myself in the visual language of tarot, more so than as a reference text for the meanings of each card. Because part of what's so cool about tarot is that these cards and archetypes have been imagined and reimagined over and over and over again by people from different times, different places, different parts of the world, different ages of their life, different aesthetics, different artistic practices. And so one card can look so many different ways, even as it approaches perhaps the same archetype or the same point in our developmental journeys. And so I love this book. It makes a great gift for yourself or others. It was given to me as a gift by my dear friend Grace. And I did want to include it here, even if it's not quite like a book for tarot beginners in the same way as these other books are. It will help you learn the cards, but with a different approach. So that is my list, friends, of the books I recommend for tarot beginners, tarot lovers, and tarot pros. To briefly recap them for you, the first book I mentioned was 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. Then I highly recommended Tarot for the Wild Soul and the associated Soul Tarot deck by Lindsay Mack, illustrated by Chelsea Granger. After that, we talked about Tarot for the Hard Work by Maria Minnis and Tarot for Change by Jessica Dore. And I wrapped it up by suggesting you get the tarot book from the Library of Esoterica because it's just so frickin' beautiful. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Pleasure Reading. As always, I've included all of the links to these books down below. And until next time, here's to your next best book.